Hi, everyone. Mike White here. Welcome to this week's vlog post. This week I wanted to share some thoughts with you, as always, really trying to lay out in some detail why so many people are facing challenges in the mortgage industry right now, while others are doing, fairly well. Uh, Preparation and planning have always been really important ingredients in a successful mortgage practice. And, in our industry, there are so many people who live day to day or their entire careers in a reactive mode. And the stress and the pain and the struggle of being so reactive really hinders the ability to understand where your business is going, understand where your business is coming from, tie and make connections with actions and activities, and how they turn into results. And it keeps coming back to the fact that originators themselves are often the victim of companies or branches or managers or team leaders, and even themselves, who fail to understand what goes on in the business, to plan and prepare and to schedule themselves for the success that they themselves say they want. And failing to do that, these companies, these branches, these managers, these team leaders, these originators, at this point in time, are really seeing the impact to their pipelines of what not, having planned and prepared themselves for what was happening and what was coming this year, and making the proper adjustments is really having an impact. And we've heard the words. I'm sure every one of you have heard the words. For those people who fail to plan, they're really planning to fail. And we've heard those who ignore history are condemned to repeat it. Yet so many people in our industry seem to just accept the fact that our business for somehow is, entirely random and cyclical and dependent upon, outside forces of which we have no control. And I'm here to tell you that, while a lot of people believe that, it's not true. And people are actually succeeding and thriving in our industry right now, largely because, they were prepared. And so I've stressed the importance of being aware. I point out the things that are coming up that may happen, things that are going to take place that could seriously impact the markets, and where opportunities are being found, by real people. And I'm talking about people who are out there originating loans every day. And they're out there originating loans, and their ability to overcome the objections in this market and deal with all the false narratives that are out there, and turning frustrations into opportunities. And that said, it's about having been prepared. It's about being aware of when certain things are going to happen, and information and how it's being perceived, as well as how you're presenting it. Each market may very well be different, but the reasons for people being successful in any market are really in plain sight. National news certainly impacts the things that go on and what people are aware of. We're sure that, unemployment data and inflation information and, all those things can impact interest rates. But interest rates are not the only thing in the world. And as we talked about a little bit last week about the coming off the gold standard and the price of gold in the early 70s and then the mid 90s and where we are today, and looking at those things, one of the things that we looked at was, hey, while all of those things have changed dramatically in their relationship, the price of gold versus the price of housing versus the price of cars versus, minimum wage, one of the common denominators across the line was, if you look at it, the interest rate environment. Interest rate environment in the 70s was in the 7% range. Interest rate in the 90s, when we went to 1996, was in the 7% range. We're talking now that we're in the 6 to 7% range, and yet people are swearing that nobody's going to buy a house and get rid of a 3% mortgage, for another house with a 7% mortgage. Well, that's just plain nonsense. You can't say nobody's doing it. Why? Because it's happening every day. We're not only seeing people selling those houses with 3% mortgages to buy houses that they want or need because of circumstances. That 7% mortgage is not stopping them from making that happen. And you can tell that it is just such nonsense that historically, over the last 50 to 60 years, the average interest rate in this country has been 7.75%, for God's sakes. What are we talking about? The interest rate market is stopping people from buying. Well, hell, if that's the case, then how come refinances are up significantly over this time last year? Why would people be refinancing these loans? They can't all be people who took loans in the eights or refinancing down to the sevens and the sixes. There's a lot of people refinancing 3 and 4 and 5% mortgages simply because it's cheaper for them to consolidate their debt and pay off a 25% credit card or a 15 or 18% personal loan, or get rid of $1,000 a month car payment by rolling it into their now mortgage payment, which gives them greater cash flow. Because again, it's not one thing that does it. It's a combination of things, the effect of all things, and how the mortgage fits into the cost of living and how their financial obligations are structured. But if you're not having those conversations, if you're running around listening to these talking heads swearing that nothing in the world is ever going to happen because 7% mortgages is unsustainable, that's complete and total nonsense. And so for people who are paralyzed because they believe in that, yeah, they're going to go out of business, where they're not going to make a whole hell of a lot of money. And the people who truly understand that 7% or 6% mortgages is not stopping anybody from buying a house, it's not stopping people who can see a real need to refinance their houses and pay off a more expensive debt and improve their overall monthly cash flow. Guess what? You're missing out on an opportunity that other loan officers are taking advantage of. I know it because I see it on a daily basis. So again, pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to what people are going to be talking about. Today, we're going to get the unemployment numbers, both initial and continuing claims, and it can bring a lot to the table. We're also going to get GDP. Tomorrow, probably even more important, is the PCE numbers that are going to come out, which is the Fed's favorite target number for inflation. These things could really be market movers. But the reality of it is we have been fairly steady. We've been trading in a very, specific range. Do I think rates will eventually continue to, go lower? Yeah, but I think it's going to be a slow and very well moderated pace. Are we going to see periods of, pretty decent volatility? Sure, we've grown accustomed to 20, 30, 40 basis points moves on a daily basis. But you know what? You get used to it, and things rebound and they stay in the range, and you can look at it. Nobody out there doesn't buy a house or doesn't refinance over an eighth or a quarter of a percent in interest rate. It wasn't worth them doing it in the first place. If that's the margin, if the margin is that tight, they probably shouldn't be doing it. They should buy a cheaper house, or they've already got way too much debt, or it's not worthwhile for them to do that refinance. So the reality of it is you got to pay attention to the information that's out there. You got to know how it's impacting. You got to find your information where it makes sense to you and understand the logic and the reasoning behind it. Because there's a lot of people who get paid a lot of money just to generate clicks. And that's all they're doing is putting a headline out there or saying something totally preposterous because they want people to share that information and go out there and view it, not because the information is important. It's because the clicks is what makes them money. So, as always, if you have questions, comments, you want to reach out, you want to talk about how you can make a change or how you can plan for the future and participate in the wave of activity that's going to happen throughout this summer and going into the fall, you're just an email away, Mike, imtcoaching.com. We'll talk to you again next week. Take care.